Hey, what's going on everyone? In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the Sony IER-Z1R. So yeah, let's start off with the build, cable, and fit. So the build quality is really good. It's definitely the best looking IEMs because of this design. It's very shiny and reflective. So it does the design does change when you move it around, as you guys could see. So yeah, that's the build. I didn't have any issues with the build quality. It feels solid. And some people did say it was very heavy, but I don't think it's that heavy. It's right in the middle. Some other IEMs are more bulky, but I didn't think it was too heavy. Like, it weighed me down. Maybe slightly, but it's not that heavy. So yeah, the build is really good. It's made out of zirconium, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, really good build quality. And I believe these are made in Japan. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it says Japan right here. So yeah, I mean, any product that's made in Japan is usually well built. They're known to make good quality products. I think everyone knows this by now. So yeah, that's the build. Really good. And the cable isn't the best cable for some reason. But it's not bad. It's decent. It doesn't tangle up. It does feel like it has, like when I'm touching this part, it does feel slightly uneven for some reason. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if the braid is popping out or what. But yeah, that's the cable. Not the best cable. I do wish the cable was a little better for this price point. So yeah, it's comfortable overall. Has a lot of give to it. I didn't have that many issues. I just wish the cable had the quality was a little better. But other than that, I don't have any issues. So now let's talk about the fit. So the fit isn't the best fit because after some time you do feel some discomfort. Because this part is slightly bigger. So if they figured out a way to maybe move this part, because on the outer part of your ear, this part does slightly hit the lower side of your ear. So it does cause a little bit of discomfort. So I do wish the fit was better. And I think Sony is due for an upgrade for their lineup because they're good, but I still think they could be a little better. So yeah, that's the fit. So the build, cable, and fit, I do wish the cable was slightly better and the fit was slightly better for this price point. So yeah, now let's talk about the sound quality. So we're going to start off with the bass and then go to the mids and highs. And then we'll get into soundstage, imaging, and detail retrieval. So let's start off with the bass. So the bass is very immersive on these. It's very full, tight, not bouncy, but just tight. So it doesn't favor sub bass or mid bass. I feel like it's 30% mid bass and 70% sub bass, or 60-40. So it favors sub bass slightly more than the mid bass. So it's not relocated completely towards the sub bass frequencies. There is some mid bass. So yeah, overall, the bass is really, really good. If you listen to tracks like Pierre Bourne, if you listen to orchestra tracks, Two Steps from Hell, or any large scale track, the bass immerses you. Like, it's completely immersive. The bass feels like I'm at an IMAX theater because it's not bouncy, but it's just tight and present, like full. So the bass is really, really good. I don't think it's bass head level. A lot of people said this IEM is for bass heads, but I don't think it's a bass head IEM. The bass is really, really good, but it's not bass head level. I think something like the EJ-Z1R or the Variations had more bass head level bass in terms of the bounciness. So yeah, that's what I thought about the bass. Very immersive, goes all the way low. It doesn't favor sub bass or mid bass. It's kind of both, but the sub bass is more present than the mid bass. So yeah, that's a bass. Really, really good. I do wish there was maybe slightly more bass actually, and I'm not even a bass head by any means, but the way people were describing this, they made it sound like it's a bass head IEM. So yeah, that's what I thought. And now let's talk about the mid-range. So the mid-range is exceptional on these. The instrument separation is top tier, like top level. Like, it competes with the best of the best that I've ever heard. So when you have a busy track with a lot of instruments, it almost feels like you're in a hall, like a room that's really, really wide. So it does favor the width on certain tracks, not the height. So it sounds really, really good. So some people did say that the mids are thin on these, but I thought they were slightly thin, like ever so slightly. In no way did I find that it was anemic or anything. So the mid-range, it's not that thin, slightly. But yeah, so the instruments sounded amazing. They weren't warm or they weren't bright. So they sounded really, really accurate. You hear the layers of the instrument in a perfect manner. I didn't have that many issues. It just sounds like you're at a hall, like a long hall, like a venue, because everything is so spread out right, left. So it just feels like very spread out. One of the most spread out IEMs I've heard. Actually, it is the most spread out IEMs I've heard in terms of the right left feeling. There's just so much depth to the sound. So yeah, that's the mid range. So the only issue I kind of have is I wish there was a little bit more body, just slightly, because it is slightly thin. But a lot of the people who I feel like say that's overly thin, maybe they didn't get a good fit. I'm not sure. So yeah, that's the mid-range. Now let's talk about the treble. So the treble is exceptional on these earphones. It's very, very airy. I do wish it was a little more refined in the treble notes for this price point. Because the treble extends all the way, but it's not smooth. So on certain tracks, I did feel like the treble was too much, but maybe the track was recorded like that. But then on tracks that were recorded perfectly, I still thought it wasn't refined enough. But not bad by any means. I'm just being picky. So basically for the highs, after listening to a lot of EST pairs, the treble on EST pairs is more airy, but it's smoother. So maybe in their next reiteration, they can add an EST, make it in-house. I'm not sure. But yeah. So that's what I thought about the treble. Very, very good. I'm just nitpicking. So yeah. That's the treble. So now let's talk about the soundstage and imaging. So the soundstage is extremely wide. In terms of the wideness, it's one of the widest IEMs I've ever heard. It is the widest IEM I've ever heard in terms of the right-left feel. Everything is just so spread out like you're in a cathedral hall or something. Like, I don't think I used the cathedral hall analogy, but on busy tracks with live instruments and live recordings, everything is completely spread out right, left wise. So the soundstage is absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's just the best sound stages I've ever heard. And then now let's talk about the imaging. So I do think the imaging is really good on these, but I don't think it's as good as the Sony IER-M9. For some reason, the IER-M9 just has laser focus when it comes to the imaging. And I was listening to these tracks back and forth, and I still feel like the IER-M9 had better imaging because it was just razor sharp. On these, it didn't feel as laser sharp in terms of the imaging. But yeah, not bad at all. It's really, really coherent. But for some reason, it's just the imaging isn't as good as the M9. I'm not sure why, but the IER-M9 just does a better job with the imaging. So yeah. Now let's talk about the detail retrieval on this IEM. So the details you can pick up on this IEM is absolutely amazing. It's probably the second most detailed IEM I've ever heard. So compared to the U12T, the U12T favors center imaging, and this favors more right-left imaging. So in terms of being coherent, I thought the Z1R was better, but the U12T had better center imaging, like dead center when things are happening. So yeah, that's the imaging. I do wish it had slightly better imaging because the M9 has the best imaging I've ever heard. So yeah. Now let's talk about the detail retrieval. So I do think it's more detailed than the IER-M9. Not way more detailed, but slightly more detailed. You do pick up those micro nuances better on the IER-Z1R. And then compared to the U12T, I do think they're pretty close in terms of the detail. But they sound completely different. So this sounds more V-shaped. This sounds more neutral with bass boost. And by V-shaped, I mean this is barely V-shaped, like ever so slightly V-shaped. I didn't find it to be completely V-shaped or anything. So yeah, that's what I thought. So in terms of the soundstage, I do think it's wider than the U12T. In terms of being coherent, I do think it's better than the U12T. In terms of the detail, I do think they're on par with each other. But in terms of perception, this has better micro detail maybe. But they're really, really close. And then The treble, I thought it was just more refined on the U12Ts. So let's talk about the treble, mids, and bass. So the treble is more refined on the U12Ts. It sounds a little more natural and realistic. And then the bass, I don't think the IER-Z1R has much better bass, like slightly better bass. But the U12T is no slouch. It's right up there with the IER-Z1R. This just has a dynamic driver bass, and this just has a BA bass. But in no way are any of these two lacking in the bass. I never really thought that. And then the mid-range, I do feel the U12T does a better job in the mid-range because it's full-bodied, where on the Z1R it could be slightly thin. So yeah, overall, I guess it just depends on your preference. So get the Z1R if you want a more fun signature. Like, the Z1R feels like you're at an IMAX theater. But the U12T feels like you're in the studio. So IMAX theater or studio is what my perception was. And then, so the IER-M9, it feels like the sounds are coming from all around you, and like the back of your head, right, left, and front, where the Z1R or the U12T didn't really do that. So I think that's why the IER-M9's imaging is better. So yeah, this was an interesting comparison. Hopefully you guys found that helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video.